Welcome, once again, to Pandora's Box. Bernie the Bolt edition. That was All Things Will Pass by Opeth, some of our favourite Swedes. You are listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio, and I am your host as usual, Obadiah Pennywhistle. To the right of me we have Drupal Le Bear, as he's known in France.
What's up, what's
That's
up, what's
Drupal
up?
the Bear.
Or should I say bonjour?
Buongiorno. To the left we have the man with the golden nug,
Sup?
young Bullwinkle himself.
How's it poppin', everybody?
And this evening we have very special guest. We have the Marshall in the studio with us. Howdy, Marshall. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
Thanks for coming in the studio this evening and being with us all.
You're welcome.
Burn dog the bolt.
All right.
We're talking about a little bit about sort of country and western a minute ago, and you were saying you're not a fan, Bernard.
Not really. No.
Why is that then?
Just not my particular bag, I suppose.
Yeah?
My family were never interested in that, so
Yeah.
it was never played at home when I was growing up. So,
You're not ever sort of like a fan of sort of like the spaghetti westerns or anything like that?
Yeah, sometimes I'd watch that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I think that's like with me, like I quite like the whole sort of Wild West era, and obviously it sort of ties in with all that sort of like Americana and folk, like old American folk music, and so it's like country music basically was like folk music evolved into it, didn't it? What sort of like started off as sort of like more like British folk music, and then when the British settlers became more and more American, it had that more of like American twang to it, and they started doing folk songs so much about what you'd consider, I guess, like British day-to-day life, and more about American day-to-day life, which was more about outlaws and horses and ranches,
Cowboys.
I think the thing with the country and western in America is, of course, you get so many different cultures all come together. So they can pick and choose from, whereas you wouldn't really say that the British folk music has been much of an influence on sort of more contemporary.
What, on like, you mean like rock music and pop music and stuff like that? Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
the sort of the stereotype of the British folk music seems to be some bloke standing on one leg with his finger in his ear, not quite singing in tune, really.
no, that's not true at all. The most beautiful music's folk music. All the best singers and all the best bards are folk musicians.
Unless you're Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
That's what I had in my head when you said that. Like,
Bob Dylan,
not quite in tune, and just a bit like.
Yeah, again, he's an American one though, isn't he?
Bob
Dylan.
I'd go along with Bob Dylan being sort of one of my go-to artists.
So you really like Bob Dylan?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, well, he's considered folk artist, isn't he?
Yeah.
I say it's American folk, so it's not the same as British folk.
No.
But I think personally, do you know that he was Bob Dylan was courting a lady called Joan Baez?
I do. I'm familiar with her work as well.
I actually prefer Joan Baez personally. I just think her music's better personally.
Yeah.
There we are. So Bernard, by the way, he works at Aspen Waite as well. So you're a tax specialist, aren't you, Bernard?
I am. Yeah.
Helps out many a man and lady with their tax issues.
Yeah, I do.
But you also are a trivia aficionado,
Yeah.
extravaganzo.
Yeah.
You've been on Mastermind, haven't you, once?
I have. Yeah.
So we thought that you'd be a good fit to come on the pod and basically just talk a load of just random nonsense with us, really. But interesting nonsense.
Yeah.
So anything in particular you want to talk about, Bernie? I know that you really like your American presidents and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that, quite common at the moment is the news about
What, Trump?
Trump and...
Did you hear about that?
And all the stuff.
No.
Got raided by the FBI.
What?
So got raided by the FBI. I only know so much, so I'm hoping that Bernie can give us a full in-depth analysis.
Cool.
The full in-depth analysis, courtesy of various online newspapers that I've read at BBC that I've looked at in the last day or so. On Monday, the 8th, the FBI executed a warrant at his place in Mar-a-Lago in Florida and took away a load of documents. You can't go into a place without a warrant, and you can't get the warrant signed by a judge unless there is some
sufficient
sort of
evidence.
criminal intent. It's not just a fishing exercise, so there's something going on. What it seems to be is that ever since Richard Nixon, which is a subject probably for another day because that was my specialist subject on Mastermind, but ever since Richard Nixon and the Watergate era of the 1970s, every president of the United States has had to keep all the documents associated with their term of office, and they become the property of the National Archives.
Right.
And what Donald Trump did when he left office was...
I'm taking them with me.
Exactly.
Right.
He took a load of stuff away. They'd previously taken 15 boxes of documents away.
Previously. So what? So, but he hasn't been raided before, has he?
No. And
so they came and knocked on his door and they asked nicely.
I think the National Archives said, "What's happened to this stuff?"
Right.
Oh, I got that in my basement.
And he said, "Oh yeah, they've got that in wherever." Yeah, I took that down to Florida because obviously paper needs a lot warmer weather. And so what they've done is they've now taken away a load of more documents and even opened his safe. I don't think they broke into his safe, but I think his safe was opened and they took the documents out. And conspiracy theorists from both sides, because you have conspiracy theorists
of course,
for and against, don't you? The conspiracy theorists are saying either, oh, he's got special documents that he hasn't, that he's keeping to one side that relate to either some sort of wrongdoing during his term of office or in particular in relation to the storming of the Capitol on the 6th of January. So there's that sort of stuff.
Well, almost like insinuating that he had something to do with it, you think?
Or...
I don't believe that, do you?
The emails, I think there's a gap in the sort of the chain of phone logs.
Oh, okay.
So there's and I think it's almost like there's stuff missing.
Right.
We're not sure where it is. We're not sure what it was. But if we could find out what it was, then we can either say either A, nothing happened, or B, something happened and you've gone to measures to
try and hide that.
Yeah.
There's also a photograph, and I'm not sure whether it's accurate, of documents with Trump's handwriting on it, which documents have been torn up and tried to be flushed down the toilet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they didn't quite make it.
Right.
And so I don't know who took the photographs, however, but they're in the currently doing the rounds in the public domain.
Because I heard it's the first time ever that a US president has been raided by the FBI.
Whoa!
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
It's big. It's big news. It's big. And a lot of
if he is found, if there is something that he's done wrong. If he's indicted and if he's charged, then it does have a prison term attached to it.
Wow!
And one of the
I guess he'd never be able to run for president because
one of the conditions of these sort of things is that it stops you ever holding public office.
Yeah, sure.
There you go,
sure.
yeah.
So he couldn't even run for dog catch.
But when you say that, so like, what would they have to find to qualify?
I don't really know. I'm not sure what the obviously the
criteria,
the burden of proof is
on the FBI.
The FBI and the Department of Justice and the local judge have already made a judgment call that actually says there's something in this. Because let's face it, the FBI, who are an independent body, the Department of Justice, who are part of the government, so technically they're part of the Democratic Party at the moment. But
interesting.
They are also sort of one step removed from the White House and the Oval Office. They and the local judges would obviously be looking at it from an objective point of view, because there's so much at stake if they get it wrong.
What do you think? Do you think that he has done anything wrong?
Well, I think that he has probably done lots of things which have crossed a line somewhere.
He's never been.
But in his mind,
he's doing it for the service of the people.
Of the people that are his
followers,
sycophantic followers. He's doing it for the best interests of the country.
So
I agree with that.
It's almost like, what's the reason he took all of the documents back with him in the first place? If it's a rule that it's all left at the White House, and once you've done your term of office, but then I'm thinking like someone for me, if I was like the boss of somewhere for like 4 years or something, and I had all of this information, like your documents are almost like your work and everything, like. I'd kind of want to take that with me as well, but it depends what it is, doesn't it?
But I think that there's a part of Donald Trump's psyche which actually says, I don't know the rules because I've never really learnt the rules.
He's a businessman by trade, not a politician, isn't he?
I'm going to just do what I think is right. And then somewhere down the line, someone is saying, well, that's wrong. And it's like, well, I didn't know that.
Plead ignorance.
Whereas someone who's a career politician, you think someone like Joe Biden, for example, who's been a senator for donkey's years and probably was in the local politics in Delaware.
Back when he was a young man,
you know, he's probably been in politics for the best part of 50 years. He knows the way things go.
Yeah, he knows how to play the system, so to speak.
But he also knows what the system is.
Yeah.
He also knows what he's allowed to do, what he's not.
So it could just come down to ignorance.
It may be, and we often say ignorance is no defence.
Yeah.
But actually, ignorance can actually be quite a reasonable excuse. Often,
to me, it is, because it shows intent is massive in my mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If somebody intends to do something bad compared to whether they did something accidentally, to me, makes a massive difference.
Yeah. And like where you said they didn't have to raid his safe, it's almost like, if he's like, have a look at anything, like, sorry if I took this something I wasn't supposed to, but have a look at whatever you want, then that's a better attitude than or trying to hide something.
I also think that one thing I did think was really funny during before Trump was president and he was running obviously against Hillary. One of the things that he did to really try and wind up Hillary time, he'd call her crooked Hillary, wouldn't he? And he did seem everything he sort of was like anti-corruption, letting the people know the truth and stuff like that,
and the press and stuff. He hated the media and that a lot of the time.
So it's if he really is himself crooked and that was almost like a game, then almost like his like levels of deception are much higher than I would have ever thought possible. I always see him as like whether
he's quite upfront,
like him or dislike him. He's quite like what you see is what you get sort of guy.
Yeah.
So he's far more Machiavellian. If it is the case, he's far more Machiavellian than I ever thought.
I think as well that certainly since I was going to say since the Second World War, but probably not. Since the 1960s, probably. The idea of fake news has seeped into our consciousness.
Yeah, sure.
So that I think it was Norman Mailer. I might be wrong, but I think it was Norman Mailer who coined the phrase factoid about 1964, 1965, something like that, as something that sounds right but isn't.
Right.
And then if you say it enough times,
people believe it.
People then go, there must be something in this.
Yeah.
You know.
I think no matter what it is, if people see it from what they see as like a reputable source, or what they think is like a reputable source, they'll just believe it. So if things that are kind of put, even if they look good, so say for like media and things like that, if it's all packaged up in a way that looks amazing, then people will kind of believe it.
There was a situation in the 1930s where a journalist was getting stuff from the Russian, from Stalin's Russia. Basically, I suppose it's quite topical now, but it was talk in those days about the Ukrainian grain harvest and how it had failed.
Right.
And the Russian argument was that it's not failed at all. It's brilliant. It's going great. You want anyone wants to come and have a look, they'll see how wonderful it is and how we're feeding all these people. When in truth, what was happening was that millions and millions of Ukrainians were dying and being sent away to
that did so very much
camps.
Seemed to be a common thing with the Russians in those days, didn't it? Yeah.
And so this guy actually reported what the Russian mainstream were saying in American newspapers at the time,
right?
And it became sort of, oh well, someone must be telling lies, and I think it was Malcolm Muggeridge who went from British newspaper, probably the Guardian, it would be called the Manchester Guardian in those days, over to Ukraine.
See what's actually going on.
Yeah, and said, this is just nonsense. What this guy's written is just nonsense, and it's going on. This is what's really going on. But because that newspaper articles from the 1930s was in the public domain, later on, when various deniers come in,
right,
they use, we've got a reputable source in the United States telling us exactly what happened, and we got this British guy telling us something different.
Yeah,
so
who to believe?
Whereas one's true and one is false.
Yeah.
And that's what seems to happen now so much, is that rather than having an objective truth with 2 or 3 sources to back it up, you have someone who says something and it tickles the fancy of a particular
group of people
and a train of thought.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And it's we'll go with that then. And then someone comes up with something else. Then what happens is, like Nathaniel says, both sides then shout fake news.
Yeah. I heard that, like, was it like, I can't remember the exact statistic. It was like 60%, or might have even been higher than that, of people, Americans, just do not believe anything that's reported on CNN nowadays, because CNN is just considered such a corrupt news station.
Great television, though, I've got to say. I used to, whenever there would be like something crazy that was going on in America, my friend would come round to mine and we'd just stick on CNN because it is almost comical the way that it's so.
But that's what I mean. It like pulls people in. It is like a pantomime.
Yes, literally.
But also another thing is things not being reported by the actual like mainstream media sources and everything. So massive important things that are happening in the world that don't even get covered. Like I don't know how much it is being covered, but from a few, like the crisis in China with the houses. Have you heard about that? There you go. Apparently it's not being reported very much, but there might be one of the biggest real estate collapses. Like,
why is that then?
That something's happened with the economy in China.
More negatively.
So basically, like the housing isn't affordable for anyone. There's massive riots on the streets and that with Chinese people and stuff, and like the whole like kind of housing and property kind of thing that's happening in China is going to collapse, and that'll have like massive implications for like the whole of the world. But that isn't like covered on like mainstream BBC News and things at the moment.
One of the reasons it's not covered is that some of these countries are very closed, and so the news doesn't get out. So when it does get out from a particular source, then it's not considered to be credible because it
hasn't come from like the BBC or something like that. And it's like, but I saw a lot of that, and someone who was talking about it was saying that when it does come out in the actual main news, it's going to be like a massive shock for the world. And where we're going into like this recession and everything now, where things seem to be going a bit crazy,
interest
it's like
rates are
something like that will be like a black swan event that will like make everything collapse even more, like these big world event
lots
things,
of little things are piling up.
But we don't even know about it yet.
I think we like to think as humans that we kind of know what's going on around the world, but we really don't.
I also think the level of it is like, there's a saying, ignorance is bliss, and I think most people don't want to think about it. No. I think most people want to get up in the morning, have their cup of tea or coffee with their favourite biscuit, they want to trot to work, watch EastEnders when they get home, and if anyone talks about anything a bit like this, a lot of people have what you describe, like an existential crisis, as it's known.
And the thing is,
and then they just want to go see. They don't want to hear it. They're like, no.
I completely understand that side of it as well.
Yeah.
Like I understand that if I was, for example, I do a breakfast show now. But I know this is on a small scale. This is on a very small scale, of course. But
what, your breakfast show is on a very small scale?
It is.
Okay.
It is in comparison to the BBC
so
of the world.
modest.
Best breakfast show ever.
But I find myself, I don't want to go on to that show and talk about negative news and talk about, bad things in the world. I feel like if someone's going to an entertainment source, they want to be entertained and they want escapism.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, I can see why people's perspective would be that, because you don't want to go to work all day, come back, maybe you're bummed out from the day, and then hear all this bad news going on.
Yeah, you don't want it like forced upon you, something like you choose to whatever you tune into. But I do think it's really important for people to be interested in like what's happening
I think
in
that's
the
like,
world at large.
One of the things that I like, one of the things that's always my objectives with like this show, for example, is like I want people to like learn a lot from it, but it's not in that weird, depressing way. Like when you read the news,
what's happening now.
Well, we do talk about a lot of heavy subjects.
Yeah.
And we try and be very honest
There's
about
room
things,
for everything, isn't there?
I don't think that people would leave the show feeling negative. Do you know what I mean? I think people would, on the whole, leave the show.
I think there's a place, like you were saying, about things that are happening in the world which we don't know about. And I think one of the problems that we have when we're looking at maybe trying to lighten up the news a bit, like Nathaniel's trying to suggest, is that we end up trivialising it, and that the important is put to one side because we need to know what this particular actor's doing or this particular actress is doing, or what where the photographs of this particular minor royal have gone. And that almost takes up the space that you could actually use some good news in. That rather,
it's like a human thing, isn't it? You want to look at what's going to make you happy rather than...
Most people don't really want to find out about the sort of the tittle tattle and gossip relating to minor celebrities.
Oh, not so, no.
But you look at most of the tabloid newspapers,
front pages,
spoon fed to you,
and all of these magazines, like like Hello Magazine and everything, and it's just magazines just full of just rubbish.
Isn't it weird though? Is that if you let it, like that you can get pulled into it so easily? Like,
it's a very easy.
It's so weird. I think it's just human emotions, like psychology and stuff like that. Like I would never, I'd never watch, like, say something like Big Brother or something like that, or Love Island. Like my sister gets well into it. But then if it's on and I'm sitting there having a cup of tea, chatting to my parents and that, and she puts, like, you can feel yourself like getting drawn into the dramas because it's all about what the dramas are between people and stuff like that. And that's all this celebrity like stuff. It seems to be. It's just like almost like EastEnders on a wider scale, isn't it? Like,
it's interesting as well because I think obviously we've been speaking about how news outlets almost want to focus on the good side of things and drawing people away from the bad side. But then on the flip side of that, I feel like, well, this is what I'm going to say. On the flip side of that, during like COVID and stuff, that's a exactly, fear sells. If you can strike fear into people, the news is going to constantly focus on that. And that's what we found during like COVID and during the fuel crises and the money expenses going up everywhere. That is really put like upon people now. You know what I mean?
Recently, I was reading like a meta-analysis. Obviously, meta-analyses take a long time to come through because what meta-analyses are basically are like
big, either
hundreds or thousands of studies that are then all the information is compiled to come out with like a net then answer, like a final answer. And it's taken 10 years for this latest climate research to come out from these meta-analyses. And obviously, don't get me wrong, obviously I think that people should take like the environment and stuff like very seriously. But one of the things I thought was really positive was from this meta-analysis I was reading was because obviously it's only just come out, they were saying that the latest evidence is that in the last 10 years, global warming's actually like slowed down almost to a halt. So that actually it's not any worse now than it was 10 years ago, but obviously the information's only just come through. Now, I'm obviously not an expert, so, I mean, take that for what you will. I'm just saying that, like, I read that meta-analysis and it was from credible sources. Do you know what I mean? That's the good thing about meta-analyses and stuff. It's not like some author with some opinion. There's, like, it's the compiled data of hundreds and hundreds of scientists, unbiased scientists around the world that have just put data together and then just come up, basically done the maths and then come up with the answer. So I thought, I mean, that when you hear things like that, I'm like, well, why isn't that a good news? Almost like being shared. Do you know what I mean? You don't hear that. It's like, don't have kids because the world's going to die.
Well, I think part of it is because there has been a very much a polarization of climate change, that you're either it's either climate change or you're a climate change denier.
Yeah. It's such extremes of nowadays, isn't it?
If you fill that gap somewhere in the middle with someone who says it's as bad as it was 10 years ago, but it's not probably getting much worse. That's still bad.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So you're not a climate change denier.
No, not
but
so.
At the same time, you're saying, do we think we're going to be 1% higher in 20 years' time, or 2 degrees higher in 20% in 20 years' time, or are we going to, be? And then you're able to extinguish the thoughts of people who would say, like, for example, we're having a heat wave at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, is that global warming? And everyone will go back, well, I remember 1976.
Exactly,
We had a
I saw a post about that this week that I thought was really interesting, actually, just to join in on that. It was about people always using that summer of 1976, wasn't it? Yeah. And saying, like, oh, yeah, but it was hot then. And I saw basically a world map of what the world looked like through temperatures, and there was a red pretty much spot all around, like, the UK. But everywhere else was pretty as it was supposed to be, pretty normal. Right. And then there was this year, and pretty much the whole thing was like red and orange. And that was like the contrast of how, even though it was hot here back then, now it's hot everywhere.
That's the difference between climate and weather.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Today, the weather is hot. Tomorrow, the weather will be hot. The weekend, the weather will be hotter. But that doesn't mean that the Earth is warming up. You've got to look at other evidence to see whether the Earth is warming up. All that's happening is here in downtown Bridgewater, it's going to be Scorchio.
Yeah. Scorchio. Yeah, nice little faster reference there, Bernard. I approve.
That's
I approve.
All right. That's okay.
No, I do agree with you. I mean, that's just one thing I always think in general, and I think we've talked about that in the pod before. It's like people seem to be... there's something weird about the human race where we want to categorize everything, and you almost have to be like in a team. So you have to be like, you're a Man City fan or you're a Man United fan.
It's that natural tribalism that we have almost.
You're left wing or you're right wing, or you're a climate denier or you're a climate activist or you're a vegan or you're like a carnivore. Do you know what I mean? It's like, where's the middle ground? Because I think all of that is like rubbish, to be honest. Like there are some views I have. I'm a very liberal guy on the whole. I'm like live and let live. People should be, do, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, you should be able to do what you want. But at the same time, I'm also quite an old-fashioned person. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, like...
chivalrous.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I don't think like there's anything wrong with holding the door open for a lady, for example. I mean, but then saying that, I'd hold the door open for a guy as well. Might just be a little bit more happy. I might have a bit more incentive to hold it open. No, I'm joking.
I was once criticised for a situation a few years back where I was in a place where a chair fell over, tipped over, and I said to the lady who was next to it, I said, hang on a minute, and I just put it right and handed it over the table to her.
Yeah.
And she looked at me like I'd just run over a cat. That look that sort of, I have done something seriously wrong.
What are you doing?
And it was like, and before I could see the expression on her face, and so I said to her, I said, look, I'm not doing this because you can't.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I can.
Yeah. That's a really good way of saying it. And let's face it, if I like dropped a load of stuff in public, it'd be good. I'd appreciate if somebody helped me out as well. Do you know what I mean? So if you're helping somebody else out, and it happens to be a lady, it's like you're just trying to be a decent human being.
And if you're that kind of person, I find in situations like that, almost like your gut thing that you want to go and instinctively do, if you listen to that, that's probably right. So like if someone falls over, like you
help them out.
I believe that in a balanced place, that is a human, like a natural part of human nature as well. You see something like that, you'll just so like if you feel like you want to do that, just do it. Do you know what I mean? Like
I saw a crazy video, and this to me is just madness, and the fact that like more than 2 people in the UK would agree with this just boggles my mind. It was a guy that was sat on the London Underground, and not in like an extreme way or anything, but he was just sat with his legs apart, not in like a really over sort of, you wouldn't even, none of us would even think anything of it. He just had his legs sort of like, you know, just apart, and these 2 crazy women go up to him and they pour boiling coffee on his crotch and said that he was manspreading, and that he was like like forcing his like freaking like manhood on everyone around him, like trying to like dominate the situation and stuff. And this guy was just like, what the hell? And you can see he was so confused and upset and angry and stuff all at the same time. Rightfully so, in my opinion. Like, if you're just sat there on your way to work, some crazy woman runs up to you and pours coffee on your crotch, and then tries to somehow then make it out that you're the bad one. Like, you, like, lady, you just like run around to someone and just freaking thrown hot coffee on someone. It's like common sense,
isn't it? Like, it really does boil down to that a lot of time. So,
is it only me, or is the song "Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire"?
Yeah. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Yeah, but I think nowadays as well, I think it's becoming more. You know, we were saying with like people not trusting the news, and you know, rather than there being like just like honest data, it's like it's catering to a crowd and things like this. I think there's almost in some sects of society, there's almost like this cult or like religious mindset that's formed with certain ideologies.
Do you know what really, really annoys me? It's like when people have these ideologies or they think certain things, like they will infringe on someone else's like personal space, or like that woman did with that, or even like shouting at someone or something like that. Like, it's all about common sense. Like that to me is much worse than what the person was doing without, you know. And it happens all the time, and like I reckon like the whole COVID and the mask thing and all of that like really like lit that on fire as well, because like, you know, people, it's when someone else can like just shout at you randomly because they feel so strongly about something that, do you know what I mean? It's like that's what really annoys me. Or even this woman, I remember like it was a bit different, but I remember walking in this field and it was like completely empty, and like my dog's a good dog, like you know, he'll come back if I call him and stuff like that. And I was walking through the field, and there was a river, and then there was all these houses on the other side of the field, or like in another field. And this woman like comes out of her house, and she just shouted, and she was like, "Dog on lead!" And I was just like, I was a bit like shook up, and just thinking like, what the hell? Like that, it was just like really weird. But like, and when someone does, like, if you're going about your normal day and you're just kind of like pretty chilled, not meaning to inflict any wrongdoings on anyone, and just like about your normal business, and then someone just like shouts at it, it makes you feel a bit weird, you know. It proper bugs me, and then that made me really annoyed then, and I was just thinking like, woman in house.
One thing that I thought was really comical, I think it was San Francisco, you might know a bit about this, Bernard. Did you know that like it was a couple of years ago, it was during the whole COVID thing, it was all around the times of like the BLM and COVID, it was all like that. There were a couple of streets in San Francisco that were just taken over, and they were run outside of normal law and society. Did you hear about that at the time?
No, I didn't.
Right, so I can't remember how many blocks it was. It was something like 5 blocks or something. Were just taken over by people, and it was part of the. I say it's like common, obviously not amongst like most people, but it's almost like there's a little sect of people now, and they're very anti-police, but like to the extreme, like making out that like all police are scum and that police deserve to be like beaten, and that they're all, you know. So basically, they were anti-police, anti-society. So they decided they were going to take over these streets and live in this idyllic sort of
like an urban commune.
Yes, it was almost like this extremist socialist society, right? And they said they were going to have no police and it was going to be idyllic. Well, what obviously happened is literally within days, people started getting sexually assaulted. There were thefts. People had their possessions stolen from people of these societies. So what did they do? They then said that they were going to, all of these, the masterminds behind this idyllic society, let's face it, were absolute numpties, said, okay, we know what we're going to do. We're going to have a couple of people in place as security to make sure that things like this doesn't happen. And it was so funny because then there's this person with a video camera that was in this place, and they said, do you realise what you've just done? And they're like, what? I'm like, you've just invented the police. This is why society has police.
Yeah.
I was like, because literally within 2 days of you having this idyllic society without police, without any structure, I was like, people are getting sexually assaulted, people are getting their possessions stolen. So you can call it whatever name you want, security, guardians, whatever. You've just reinvented the police.
And there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
There's an actual reason for it.
I just remember this woman's face. It was like she was almost like angry and in disbelief, but you could tell she just did not know what to say. She was just like... And then I think naturally within about 3 weeks, the place was just
crumbled,
covered in litter. It was awful. It was just a cesspit, and then the people just left and dispersed. And then I think it was San Francisco. It was either San Francisco or it was Seattle, but I think it was San Fran. And then this went back to normal. Those streets just became normal streets in San Fran again.
That's as a logical person having a sort of a little bit of a sit down and a think, but I'd come to that conclusion in a couple of hours.
Oh yeah, that's madness.
It's like when you look at how, like for example, the police system started in this country. There were people who were there to stop certain crimes. Obviously, a lot of crimes go on in private places, and you can't police that until someone says something has happened. But a lot of the public disorder you can deal with fairly quickly if you've got someone there. That's how the Bow Street Runners started, and how Robert Peel started the Metropolitan Police.
I think literally since the dawn of time as well. Like, it's not a recent thing. Like, since the dawn of time, procedures have to be put in place to make sure that what's best for everyone is in place.
I remember I was listening to this guy talking about it because I'm into like my crypto and stuff.
Yeah.
And about like decentralization, regulation, things like that. Like a lot of people in the crypto community are worried about regulations coming in.
Right.
But the truth about it is, when regulations do come in, which is like a stringent rules and stuff like with governments and everything, that will actually be a good thing for crypto because it will allow more investors to come in. And the analogy he gave about it was like, you've got to have, it's like a balance between freedom and order. Yeah, like so think about like if you didn't have traffic lights and you didn't have a working road system. Yeah. Well, do you know what I mean? Like it's for the benefit of us all to drive on the left-hand side of the road, to know what road signs are, for everyone to do a test to show that you can operate a vehicle properly, because if not, it would be a chaos and everyone would be crashing into each other. It's very simple.
I think some people, it's almost like well-intentioned naivety, but it's like, it's very nice to think, say that, you could leave your wallet in a room with anybody and that they would go, oh, that's Bernard's wallet. That's not mine. I'm just going to leave it there. But unfortunately, we know that there are some people that would take advantage of that situation. They might steal your whole wallet. They might just take 20 out. But, you know what I mean? A good majority of people would not do that. But unfortunately, it's not. You need to have that backbone, that security net. That if somebody takes something of yours, if they steal your car or they steal your wallet, there's ramifications for that.
But also, I think that they're going back to the chivalry side of things that we were talking earlier. I remember an incident very many years ago when I lived in Norwich. I found someone's car keys on the floor.
Right.
Had a look round. No one walking towards a car. So, didn't really know what to do. Didn't have any identification, didn't know who the person was.
Right.
Couldn't see an identification of the type of vehicle, so I couldn't try out, to see. If
it wasn't beeping back then, like, boop.
No.
Yeah.
And this was in the days when you used to have a man with a red flag walking in front of you. Not quite. That's a few years ago. So I took it to the police station.
Yeah.
And said, look, I'm going to hand these keys in. Oh, thank you very much. Can I have your,
name and address.
Name and address, whatever about it. And this person had obviously lost the keys. They'd gone to the police and said, look, I've lost my keys. I'm not sure. And they said, oh, your keys have been handed in. This woman was really surprised that the keys had been handed in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually made a point of coming round to see me, to personally thank me for handing the keys in.
No comment, Bernard. No comment.
No. And gave me a bottle of wine and a little thank you card.
Oh, that's nice.
Nice.
Just to say thank you, because she was so what I'd done was so unexpected. Because and I think that when we do a good deed,
it sends a message into the universe. People will follow that. Like we say, pass it on.
I think it's like momentum.
Yes, exactly. That's what
I always see it as momentum. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you build up positive or negative momentum.
You don't know what that positive thing you've done, how it's affected someone else, and how it will make them do something like that.
You don't know what your action is having on someone.
That's it.
Until maybe years later, when someone says, I'm not a great fan of the Radio 4 programme on a Saturday morning with Reverend Richard Coles, whose name the programme name escapes me at the moment.
Right.
They have a little section in it called Thank You,
right,
where they have someone who was helped by somebody.
Right.
They have a chance to actually say thank you to that person, even though they don't know their name, they
right,
don't know their circumstance or anything like that.
That's a cool segment.
Yeah, and
it's cool.
Yeah, and it's just a little 5 minutes out of the program where they're actually saying, thank you for doing that. Thank you for
that person might not be listening, but they might be.
And that's what they say at the end of the section. They say, if you recognise yourself as that person, get in touch. And from time to time, someone actually says, I was that person on that train in 1984.
Yeah. To me, it ties in with what I was saying earlier on about saying, how that meta-analysis I was reading about the climate change and how, everything here is bad. And the reason I say it reminds me of that is because, I was like saying there's some people when you can see some, especially like younger people I find, are so convinced that the world is ultimately a bad place, or that we're all doomed. Humankind have messed everything up.
We're going to hell in a hell and handcart.
Yeah, the world's buggered. We've killed the animal kingdom, everything. And it's like, a lot of it's not about ignoring the serious consequences of our actions, and it's not about, ignoring, as I said, it's not about being naive, like I was saying, about, say, leaving your wallet in a room with somebody. But there is a lot to be said for being a glass half full person, and for having
the faith that there's
counting your blessings, counting your blessings, and remembering, think actually, rather than thinking of the times you've been messed over in your life, why don't you think about all the things actually that you're really lucky to have?
And it's crazy if you start doing that, how it will change your 100%
outlook. And that's why I said it's like, to me, it's like momentum. Important. That's why I said to me, it's like momentum. It's like the more momentum you get in that positivity, the more it's easy to stay like that.
But it goes the other way as well.
Yeah, you can see why people go through, people that go through, say, whether it's drug addiction, alcoholism, it could be anything. But, people get stuck in ruts. We all do. I think pretty much everybody on the face of the earth, if not everybody, has been through...
Stuck in a rut somehow.
Negative stages and, years long. Like years long sometimes. I think most people have been through a stage in their life where probably for a few years they've, been in a rut, But that's an example of like negative momentum's built up in your life. Things aren't going right. It almost seems like, you unfortunately go through stages where it's like one bad thing after bad thing, and it's just unfortunate. But then maybe you'll have an epiphany at some point. You'll actually think, wait a minute, actually, my mum and dad weren't that bad. I've had some good friends in my life. Do you know what I mean? Actually, I've got a couple of good things going for me. It's time for me to actually appreciate what I've got, rather than being some mopey git.
I often look back at my life like stepping stones across a stream.
I love how poetic that is, Bernard.
And like, you're standing on a particular stepping stone. You're not quite sure about the next one, but you look back and you see the stepping stones that you've been on.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't have been on that one, I wouldn't have got to this one.
Yeah.
Now, if I hadn't have been on that one back there, I wouldn't have been able to get to the next one.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about, the highs and lows, we mentioned earlier Richard Nixon. One of my favourite Richard Nixon quotes is, and I'm going to misquote it because I haven't got it written down, but it goes something along the lines of, it's only when you've walked in the deepest valley that you can appreciate the view from the tallest mountain.
Oh, that's beautiful. On that note, We're going to listen to a track now, but don't worry, we're going to come back in a minute. Bernie the Bolt will still be here. Who knows what we'll talk about in the second hour. Cheers, folks. That was Over Now by Alice in Chains. Before that, we had Watcher in the Sky by Ghost. You are listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio. Cheers for chilling with us this evening. Just a quick reminder, whichever platform you're listening to us on, we are on Aspen Waite Radio every single Wednesday night from 7 until 9 p.m. We also have our YouTube, Pandora's Box Podcast. We're also on Spotify, Pandora's Box Podcast, and like loads of other, any way you can get a podcast, really.
Pretty much.
So we'd appreciate you following us on all platforms. If you like our content, give us a like, a subscribe,
baby,
and a share.
ring
and
that
ring
notification
that bell.
bell.
Ding, 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 ding. We have Bernie the Bolt, a.k.a. the Marshal, a.k.a. Barn Dog. The barn dog in the studio with us today. We were just talking just during these last songs.
That's one way of making sure no one will ever know who I am.
Yeah. Bernard Critchley, tax specialist. Extravaganza.
Yeah, just a little plug for Bernard as well. Check out Topical Tax Tips.
Yeah.
On YouTube, you can see Bernard giving his tax advice.
The best tax advice in all the land. Yeah, and it's you know, you might be thinking like, oh well, I'm not really interested in tax, but it's the whole point of it is that it's things that every single person can use in their lives. Just, you know, it's everything's put in layman's terms for people so that they can live their lives in a better and more easy way. Things that a lot of people, you know, have questions for, but they don't have the access to the answers because not everyone's going to have access to a tax specialist like Bernard, who's got, you know, multiple decades of experience and qualifications to back it up. So it'll make your life better watching it. So go on YouTube, Aspen Waite, topical Bernard Critchley's Topical Tax Tips. Watch it. We'll sort you out. We were just talking during these last songs anyway about the NHS and doctors and stuff. Like my Uncle John, who also works at Aspen Waite, Bernard was saying, he was talking to him earlier, my Uncle John's got a herniated L5 disc in his lower back at the moment. It's causing him really severe sciatica and he's might have to have an operation. Hopefully he won't. The efficacy of back operations is actually very iffy. Hopefully physio will be able to sort him out. Often people that have back surgeries often then somewhere down the line have to have repeat surgeries. Ooh. My grandmother's a good example of that. I think she had her first back surgery, I think, in something like 1995. She's 86 now, and I think she's had 5 operations. And she's not any better now than before she had her first operation, to be honest.
No, savage.
Yeah, and she's got loads of freaking lumps of metal in her back, which is not very nice, is it? But one thing we were talking about, and it goes what we were saying earlier on about being sort of more like glass half full and sort of counting your blessings. We're talking about the NHS and doctors and stuff, and about how people often, you know, they like to have a good moan. And don't get me wrong, you know, that things could be, the admin side of things could be working better in terms of like the NHS and stuff like that.
You can always have more efficiencies in certain places.
But I actually have a lot of respect for doctors, and I think they get a lot of a hard time because I know a lot of people, even people in my family, that, you know, they're down the doctor's rubbish, they didn't do anything. And I think, to be fair, doctors have very high stress jobs. You know, they work long hours. You know, often they're talking to members of the public. You know, when you're dealing with members of the public, you're dealing with a wide spectrum of people. Unfortunately, sometimes they might put up with abuse. Sometimes they're looking at people trying to explain what's wrong with them. And the person's looking back at them like a goldfish without being rude. Do you know what I mean? Like in some, you know, you never, like if you're a GP, say, you never know who's going to come through the door. You never know what that person, are they going to be respectful to you? Are they going to be polite to you? Are they going to be expecting you to just give them a miracle pill and sort out all their problems? And if you can't, they're going to give you the finger. Like,
or have they just looked up their symptoms on Google?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. As I said, I'm not saying that all doctors are amazing, and obviously, like any profession in life, because we're just people at the end of the day. You can get good doctors, bad doctors, good teachers, bad teachers, whatever. But I in general, I say I have a lot of respect for doctors. As I said, it's a high stress job. I think that people demand a lot from them. At the end of the day, it's called, you know, they call it a practice for a reason. You know, people I think expect to go to like a doctor and them to have some miracle cure for you. The reason it's called a practice is because it's just that, it's a practice. Doctors are much better at telling you what you don't have wrong with you than what you do have wrong with you, because they basically like they check off almost like, okay, well you don't have that and you don't have that, and then they come to the most logical conclusion of what you do have. You know, and then sometimes it doesn't even turn out to be that. And then it's easy to go, that doctor, you know. Well, it's like, you know, well, if you want to train to become a doctor, then there's nothing stopping you.
I find a lot.
You're not going to find the answer to your particular ailment by searching the internet for an hour.
No, and also,
whereas
it's all filled with the gloom and doom stuff.
Well, that's it, because otherwise you will, your life will be just full of hypochondria.
I mean, people even joke, don't they? They say, if you get a headache and then you Google the symptoms and it's just like, brain cancer,
you're gonna die,
tumor, and then you get paranoid.
2 days to live.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's 99% chance that's not the case.
I've got to admit, I've done that a fair few times. Whenever I'm like, something's not right, and I'll search them enough and be like, I better write my goodbyes.
Yeah. Like literally 19 years old, and you're convincing yourself you're dying or something.
Yeah, I find as well.
This is a bloke who can eat Tupperware. And,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's 19 for goodness sake.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to get to my age, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of the negative people about that kind of stuff as well, who expect just an answer and expect this whole expectation of someone else is going to sort out my problems for me. If you start looking at your own health and how you're living day to day and exercising properly and all of that stuff, a lot of the things to improve every part of your life starts with what you do on a day-to-day basis. And I think a lot of people just expect a magic pill for sorting themselves out. But you've got to really take every day and make sure that you're in the best position to make sure that you are as healthy as you can be, because
take it into your own hands.
I
think as much
more
as you can.
responsibility. Take some more responsibility for your life rather than expecting, because the NHS is a free. Well, it's not free because it's paid, but we pay taxes and stuff. But it's
a public service.
It's a public service, but you've got to respect. You got to have more respect for that. Do you know what I mean? Rather than
and also going back to what we were saying, just count your blessings. Think 2,000 years ago, if you had a bad headache or something, they'd crack you over the head with a hammer, trepanation, and they'd say, it was you're possessed by some spirit. We need to put a hole in your brain so that they can escape. You know what I mean? So it's like
even up until the not too distant past, it was considered to be quite okay to bleed patients.
Put a hole in someone's
or think
head.
about medical asylums. Mental asylums in Britain or America.
Or to give people a course of leeches to suck out the badness.
Or electrotherapy. People that had PTSD or anxiety or depression, they'd give them they'd electrocute them. As if that would do them good, or back in the around the sort of Napoleonic era, if somebody was suffering from delusions, a normally fine person that didn't usually suffer from mental illness, but say something traumatic happened in their lives and they were going through a stage of depression or anxiety, they used to do awful things to them, didn't they? You've heard about they used to beat them, put them in freezing cold bathtubs, wouldn't let them sleep, all of these barbaric things. It's the complete opposite of what's going to make somebody with a mental illness get better. And they even did it with King George.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
Mad George.
Yeah, very tragic. I think the other thing about going back to some of the things we were talking about in the first half of the program is you get these wonder drugs that are on the internet. They're sort of clickbait adverts on Facebook or whatever for a slimming pill that will do wonders, or something that will cure a particular illness, and this miracle drug, this miracle cure, this miracle. And you think, well, if it was so miraculous, why isn't it? Why don't I know about it yet?
Yeah.
Why aren't all my friends saying, you ought to take this drug, it's brilliant?
Yeah.
Because I've had it. It's back to, we were saying right at the start, weren't we, about fake news. And someone has an opinion and someone else has a separate opinion, and it's like, if your doctor isn't working for you, then try this.
Yeah.
It's like this is a secret that the health service don't want you to know about, and you think, hang on, what health service would you know that wouldn't want you to know about a drug?
That's another thing.
That's actually helping.
Yeah.
You.
It's almost like the idea that like doctors are actually really sinister, and they get into the profession to like secretly.
That's just showing it. That's just showing people about the way that you think about the world.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, everything's sinister, and like everyone's out to get me.
Yeah, you make so much money.
And also, I think a lot of it is to be said. I mean, in a way, I think it just goes to show how good we have it in the UK and you know, most of Europe and America, that we have time to come up with these sort of conspiracy theories about stuff like that. Because say like people that say, if you live in like China or Russia or something, then even like that's like a lot. You got a lot harder life. Do you know what I mean? Like if you step out of line. I mean, I was there's a guy. He's called Dr. Mike Israel. I follow him on social media. He's a really good sports scientist and stuff. You know, he's just a really interesting guy for the sort of things that I'm into. Anyway, he was originally a Russian Jew. He was born a Russian Jew, but I'm sure you'll know a couple of things about this, Bernard. But during the I think it was 80s, his family relocated to America because the Russians were really hard on Russian Jews, and it was a lot of them moved to Israel and a lot of them moved to the States. And he was saying that a couple of years ago, for the first time since he was like 5 years old, he was going to go back and do like a seminar and do loads of stuff in Russia. But the reason he ended up not doing it was because he was looking into it and he found out that, did you know that if you go to Russia, you say this would never happen in like Britain or America or anything. If you go to Russia, Russia like reserves the right that if they then, when you're leaving the country, if they decide that they don't want you to leave the country, they reserve the right to make sure that you can't leave the country. So you can go to the airport and they're just not going to let you on a flight.
That's if you're a Russian national.
Is that just if you're a Russian national?
If you're a Russian
that would,
national.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he was born a Russian. Obviously, he's an American citizen. But he said that he found that out and he just went, nope, I'm not going there, because from his point of view, think about what the Russians aren't going to like in this day and age. He's an American citizen, but he was born a Russian Jew. It's almost like he's just, you know, and he's a well-known guy. I mean, he might not be well-known to you three, but like there are millions of people across the world that follow him. So he's a pretty well-known guy, relatively very famous man. You know, like all of his YouTube videos get like hundreds of thousands of views and stuff. So he was just like, nope, there's no way I'm going to do that. They're going to make an example of me. It's not worth the risk. He lives an amazing life in America. He's rich. He's respected. Like, why would you risk it? Why would you risk it?
I obviously can't give too much away. Because of what I'm about to say. But I actually knew of people that actually smuggled Jewish Russians.
Oh, really?
Out of Russia in the 70s and 80s.
That's amazing.
Can't do much more than to say.
Right.
That's
fascinating, though,
that
Brad.
actually happened.
Yeah, I met
and they were Russian. They were Russian Jews. It all, well, no, it's, I won't say too much.
No, sure.
I'm going to give too much away.
Don't want to incriminate you or anyone else.
No, but it was quite dangerous work.
Yeah, no, I imagine.
And yeah, there was certainly
a risk, big risk.
Most of those that they smuggled out went to Israel.
Yeah, I met when I went to Crete in 2019. One of the couples I just met there and was speaking. The lady they were from Israel, but she was a Russian Jew that had moved to Israel when she was younger, and he was like an Israeli Jew.
One of the conditions of the state of Israel being created after the Second World War was that anyone who was a Jew could live in that country.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
well, it's the only Jewish nation on the planet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very like unique place in that regard. There's no other Jewish nation on the face of the earth. There's loads of Christian ones. There's loads of Muslim ones. There's pretty much every other religion. There's multiple ones. They're the only Jewish country on the planet. You know,
and yes, I don't know how many million Jews there are in Israel these days, but
there's not many Jews in general, are there?
No, it's more. There used to be the statistic. I'm not sure if it's still true. There used to be the statistic that there are more Jews in New York than in Tel Aviv.
Right, I wouldn't be surprised.
And I think America has got maybe more Jewish people than
I think
it certainly used to be the case.
A lot of Hollywood celebrities, whether you know it or don't know it, are Jewish, aren't they?
Yeah.
You think, like Sarah Michelle Gellar is, Scarlett Johansson is, Natalie Portman is, Seth Rogen is, even Paul Rudd. Like so many people.
And
like,
you go back. You don't have to go back too many generations to find Danny Kaye, Fred Astaire.
But the thing is, a lot of them changed their names, didn't they, from their original, whether it was Polish names
Frederick Osterlitz became Fred Astaire.
Yeah. Say, because a lot of it is just because they knew that
some of them don't change their name, like Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah,
some of them do.
He's a great guy, and he's a great actor. Love Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
But I say a lot of them had like 12, 13 letter long Polish surnames and stuff, so they thought, I'm going to change that. Well, it's like one of my favourite bands, Rush, their lead singer, Geddy Lee. His name's, it's not really Geddy Lee, it's like Geddy Lee. I think it's like Lee's his middle name, but he treats it like it's his last name, because his actual last name's like Skocevich.
Welcome to Aspen Waite, the home of stereotypical racism.
No.
Sorry, stereotypical sycophant. No, is it xenophobia?
No, we love. I say we're big fans of all the polls on the pod. We've talked about the winged hussars before.
I like a couple of their dancers.
Yeah. No, we've talked about obviously before.
That's a joke, Nathaniel. All right, pole dancers. That
was a good one.
We've talked about the winged hussars on the pod before, and also about how a lot of people didn't realise that. I think it was like half the people that in the Battle of Britain, half the RAF pilots were actually Poles.
Well,
Polish fighter pilots that had been rescued.
If you go out of London on the A40, you actually go past the Polish War Memorial.
Right.
And that is for, not exclusively, but that's for all the Polish
fighter pilots?
Right. Because it's right near RAF Hendon.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Which is where they were based.
It's quite good, isn't it? Because there's that old movie, I think it's just called The Battle of Britain, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And at the end, though, to be fair, it's quite educational, because at the end, they list every single nation. And how many pilots of each nation. So I think it was like, randomly, it was like one Israeli.
Yeah, well,
and
of
then
course,
it was like,
the country of Israel didn't exist during the Second
which is
War.
quite interesting. I thought
actually, they were the British Protectorate of Palestine at that time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Yugoslavs, and there were a lot of
loads of Poles, obviously British.
In fact, a friend of mine, when I was at school, his father came over during the war and stayed.
Really?
And a lady I worked with a few years ago, her parents were both Polish, and they came over as children.
Oh, right. So I've always
with their parents.
I've always gotten on very well with Poles. Like whenever I met them,
I
always get on with Poles really great for whatever reason. Just like there's
only joking. Only joking.
No. Yeah, a lady that we work with, director, she's Polish. One of my favourite restaurants in town. The chef there is Polish. Good man, Eric. Used to serve in the Polish army and was also a Polish arm wrestling champion. He's a cool guy.
I think the Eastern Europeans generally got a very bad reputation.
What I've never understood why though. No. If anything, I always think that I almost feel bad because, and I can see why, but say at the end of the Second World War, obviously the British Empire was pretty much the nail in the coffin by that point. We'd sold loads of land and stuff to the Americans to try to give them an incentive to join the war, hadn't we? Like British territories. Our troops depleted, all sorts of stuff, I could go on, but anyway. We almost turned our back on them in a way, didn't we? Because when the Iron Curtain fell at the end of the Second World War, we obviously had so many issues ourselves in Britain, we basically decided that it was easier to ignore what was happening.
Well, I'm not sure that we actually were strong enough as a country.
Well, exactly. That's my point.
To be able to negotiate at whichever conference it was, Yalta probably, where the future of the basically where the future of Europe would be.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not blaming like our government, say, because we wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. But it doesn't stop the fact that I feel a little bit bad because, from say the Poles' point of view, it must have seemed like we just suddenly went very, very quiet on the issue and just were like, oh, okay, well, what's happening in the East is happening in the East. You know, we're just going to carry on and rebuild.
I think there was certainly a school of thought amongst the German hierarchy during the closing year of the Second World War.
Well, in the Nazi Party.
In the Nazis, not the out and out Hitler supporters, should we say?
Right. Not the SS.
That these Russians need to be defeated, and perhaps the British, the French, the Americans, and whatever can join us in actually getting rid of the Russians back to the Russian territory. Because effectively what happened was, as soon as the Second World War finished, the Russians stayed put where they were.
Yeah.
And Germany was divided up into a French section, an American section, a British section, and a Russian section. They
consider it, in layman's terms, it was just sort of the East and West, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Berlin Wall.
And then from what was it, from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, a Iron Curtain has fallen on Europe.
That's what Winston Churchill's speech, wasn't it?
It was. I didn't want to do the accent because I couldn't do it justice.
Oh, I'd have liked to have seen you try, Bernard. That would have been more entertaining.
Never in the field of human conflict.
Oh, it's a great speech, isn't it?
Been owed by
There's so many.
There's so few.
Yeah, man, legendary. But I mean, yeah, all the Lithuanians and the Poles and that, they got a rough deal, didn't they? I mean, they grew up in really just bad situations, didn't they?
Well, I was recently reading the biography of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who was obviously a
Russian
man in space. But actually,
what do they call it? Cosmonauts, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cosmonauts.
He was actually born in Ukraine.
Right.
And he was born in the 1930s, and so he had the Russians come in one way onto his family's farm, and then once they got rid of that problem, then the Germans came during the Second World War. And it was a sort of 9-year-old, 10-year-old, or whatever he was. He and his family escaped, and I'd never really thought of someone who was Russian.
Yeah.
And famous for doing something in the 1960s, actually being a victim of war. You don't think of it that way.
Yeah, no, you don't know, do
you? So there's more Russians were killed during the Second World War than any other nation.
They think it's like innumerable, don't they? They don't know how many Russians were killed. That's how many were killed. It was millions. Millions.
And that's why the recent
Ukraine
stuff
conflict
that's going on in Ukraine, they wanted to make a big deal about a certain date, and I can't remember.
I think it was within a month.
It was
something like that.
It was because that's the Russian national holiday for victory in the Second World War.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
So they make a big deal about victory in the Second World War because of the fact that so many people were killed. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe they were sent to die. The soldiers were just it was a conscripted.
I know. Obviously, it's quite common knowledge that obviously they consider it like the worst mistake of the Second World War from Hitler's point of view to open up the war on the Eastern Front. But I remember reading like several testimonials from German generals that said it was almost menacing, like almost like terrifying, that literally the Germans at first they were killing so many Russians. They were literally like, there were bodies everywhere. They were bombing them left, right, and centre because they had superior equipment. This was before the winter set in and everything like that. But they said that they never on any other front had it be almost in such a terrifying way that it was almost like for every Russian they killed, another two popped up. But it just, when they thought, well, we'll just keep going and eventually they'll run out. but it just never did. And then the Germans started, obviously, even for every one German that, say, killed 10 Russians, every Russian would be replaced. And then the Germans started getting nipped away, and then the winter set in.
And their equipment wasn't being replenished.
They couldn't get their tanks through the snow. And it was Leningrad, wasn't it, where they had their massive standoff? Was it Leningrad? Do you remember? Stalingrad, that they had their massive...
You knew it was named after some Russian...
Yeah, some Russian leader, yeah.
Because they did, the whole tactic they had at sort of that point in the World War was like actually just basically wrecking everyone, wasn't it? Where they would encircle them.
It was called Blitzkrieg.
Just come through and from all angles.
They call it Blitzkrieg, yeah. Because...
It was basically... They did a little bit during the Spanish Civil War as a sort of a practice with Franco's army,
the leader of Spain.
But they went through Western Europe once they decided that they were going to go. They went through Western Europe like a knife through butter, and one of the reasons has recently been found that one of the reasons why the tanks lasted so long as they did was that the tank drivers were all on amphetamines.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
And they basically were able to go.
Just keep going.
For days and days and days. And when they finished...
Superpowered tank drivers.
When they finished, they had an absolute monster of a meltdown where they would be like asleep for 5 days or something.
Yeah, apparently it was in all of their medical kits as well, wasn't it? Standard issue.
Yeah.
Standard issue.
Yeah, there's a great book I've read about not just the Nazi hierarchy, but actually the rank and file are all given this. I can't remember what the drug was called. It had a proprietary name that you could actually buy over the counter.
Well, Hitler himself was, by today's standards, a massive drug addict, wasn't he?
Oh yeah.
You can see him the 1938 Olympic Games, is it? 36 games, and he's like tweaking, isn't he? He's there, he's making his speeches, and between it, he's like looking like this, and it's like you think that's crazy. Looking at him now, and there's no way a public figure could be on camera like that, looking like that nowadays. People would be like, get him off.
They reckon that Winston Churchill was probably a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah. He liked his whiskey, didn't he?
But I don't think he ever took any form of drug.
He never seemed like he did either.
No, and so whereas
Hitler was a tweaker.
When you see this stuff, and I mean that's why, going back to sort of fake news and conspiracy theories, that's why there's absolutely no truth in the story that Hitler escaped.
No, you don't think
Hitler
so?
escaped the Second World War because he'd have had to take the doctor with all his flipping tablets with him, because there's no way he could live in the Peruvian jungle or wherever he's supposed to.
Well, yeah, they think that he escaped to, I think it's Argentina.
It was Argentina first, and then he moved up into the Andes.
Because obviously they had pro-Nazi sympathies, even though they were one of those countries that were technically neutral.
Well, it was wasn't it Juan Perón? But Eva's husband was. He was president of Argentina in those days.
And obviously Franco
and the connections between
they were friends, weren't they?
Yeah.
Hitler and Franco were friends. Franco
wouldn't let the
head of Spain.
Yeah, he wouldn't let the Spanish people into the war because he saw exactly what Hitler had done to Mussolini.
They think that he secretly sort of like let like subs and submarines and boats like fuel there and stuff, whereas they didn't do that with the British, say, or the Americans. But there is that rumour, isn't there? And it's come to light sort of in recent years where some people do believe that he was snuck out. Because there was no like solid remains of him. He was burned. Apparently, he was burned.
Yeah, but
wasn't
his jawbone's in Russia.
Yeah. That's it. So they've got a jawbone,
and they've DNA'd it.
Yeah, really? Yeah. They've got a jawbone, but he was found by, I think it was Russian soldiers, and then they burnt his body straight away. And Ava Braun's.
They committed suicide and the
cyanide.
The staff of the bunker burnt his body outside.
Yeah. It was the staff. So it was his own man,
his own people.
Right.
Burnt his bodies outside.
Right.
His and Ava Braun's. And then the Russians were quite literally round the corner.
I tell you what, though,
so they found the ashes.
Yeah.
And someone took the jawbone as a souvenir.
It wasn't
until after the Berlin Wall came down.
Yeah.
the archives start being available,
right,
that these things come out. It's the same for Martin Bormann. Martin Bormann didn't escape. When I was a kid, Martin Bormann was alive and well and living in somewhere in Latin
I'll tell you what,
America.
though, a lot of Nazis did, though, didn't they?
Yeah, but he died. Bormann died, and they found his body, and
really?
Again,
Did they
DNA tested him?
Because but it is strange.
But
isn't
a lot
it?
of a great book by a tremendous Second World War author called Guy Walters. It's a book about, quite literally called the Nazi Hunters.
Right.
And just looks at the people that escaped, how they escaped, and how they were caught.
Didn't a lot of them go over to NASA?
Some of the Nazi scientists helped develop the space rockets and stuff.
The idea, I'm not sure. I mean, Werner von Braun, who developed the rocket that eventually became
the V2, is it?
Yeah,
the V1 and V2 rockets.
Yeah,
I think he was pardoned by the States because they just wanted him to help out.
Well, they wanted his technology. Those rockets that eventually became the rockets that sent American astronauts into space.
So they do say that Nazi scientists.
He wrote a book called "We Aim for the Stars" in about the late 1950s, early 1960s, when the Mercury program was just about to start, and one of the reporters from a British newspaper, in reviewing the book, said it ought to be called "We Aim for the Stars, but occasionally we hit London."
Oh, right, yeah.
Because they were still a little bit bitter
about
the fact that,
they were taking these guys that were so responsible for so much death.
Justification, and I'm not sure this is a right justification. The justification was if we didn't get them in the West, then the East would have them. Yeah,
I've heard that.
The Russian space program was superior to the American space program right the way through.
Right up until the end,
right up until Apollo 10.
Yeah, as you said, the first
to the moon.
As you said, the first man in space was a Russian.
The first man in space was a Russian. The
first satellite that orbited the Earth.
First satellite, Sputnik.
Yeah.
The first man in space was Russian, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961. The first woman in space was she was the sixth Russian in space, first woman. Alexei Leonov was the first man to walk in space in 1965.
Yeah.
And they had two-man space program before the Americans. It wasn't until the end of Gemini and the beginning of the Apollo program that the Americans took over.
I have to say, I do think it, just taking a step back, I do think it's mental that apparently you can go into like the middle of Argentina, and suddenly you'll come across some strange little town. And suddenly everyone there speaks German, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah!" And apparently they're brought up there to almost like admire Nazi culture. So apparently there you say like, "Why does everyone here speak German?" I say, "Oh, my great grandfather was a Nazi."
Yeah,
and they'll go like, "You will," like, but because obviously
they still got like flags up and stuff.
And they
still have
medals.
Also they're still like I've seen photographs of. Sort of like buildings, with swastikas on,
and it's just crazy because you think you would, in your head, unless you knew this information, you would never imagine that you could be in the middle of somewhere like Argentina, like South America. It has a certain feel about it, doesn't it? You think about it in your head, and you think jaguars and ayahuasca ceremonies, and everyone either speaks Spanish or, in Brazil's case, Portuguese, and then to imagine that these weird little Nazi towns.
They have a history of having. Outlaws and sort of people escaping justice as a place
even
to
back
go.
in the Wild West,
because that's where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid went.
That's right. Yeah, went down. I think they went to Peru. I think it was.
It may have been Bolivia. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Bolivia or Peru. It definitely wasn't Argentina.
No, but it was up in the.
It wasn't Mexico. I think it was Peru or Bolivia.
It was definitely proper Latin America.
I don't know how true it is as well, but about the I heard
about
like
knowing what you're about to say, Drew, I expect it's probably not completely true, but it has an element of truth in it.
Oh, cool. Well, you can enlighten me.
I know nothing, mate.
Like the ships. I don't know if it was ships or submarines. About to Argentina. Argentina that were full of like lots of.
You're going to mention the Nazi gold, are you?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was gold. It was supposed to be all old like antiques and everything.
Works of
collected, like works of art.
Yeah, the
like,
Nazis stole. They stole. I think it's as much as it's something crazy. Like 60% of the art and antiques, things like that were stolen from Europe,
plundered,
is still unaccounted for. Still unaccounted for.
And a lot of it went to Argentina, didn't it? Or something?
Some of it certainly went that way. There was an art dealer in, I think it might have been Switzerland, it might have been Germany, but it probably was Switzerland.
Obviously half of Switzerland speaks German, don't
and
they?
He died, and his family found these paintings.
Yeah.
And there was a huge number of stolen artwork, and he had basically been selling off various pieces of art.
Black market.
Hermann Goering. I always wanted my Liverpudlian friend to mention that Hermann Goering was the worst German in the world in the Second World War, but so that he would say Hermann Goering was the worst German in the Second World War, but he never did. But anyway,
it's all right, man, because you just did, and that was cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, Hermann Goering had a big castle, and he filled it with stolen artwork.
Yeah, they think as well that in the Alps, they think there's like built into the mountains. There's little basically just like stores, basically storerooms full of gold bars and artwork.
There was a film a few years ago with George Clooney, wasn't there?
Which one's that then?
I can't remember.
Oh, is it Ocean's 11? Not that one.
No, it's where they are repatriating the.
I haven't seen it. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I forget what they're called. I think it's called The Art Hunters or something like that.
All right. I'll have to watch that.
And it's...
sounds good.
No, it's called the...
You sure it's Clooney?
Yeah, shall we stop everything and look it up?
Yeah. I could do.
Meanwhile, back in the real world, Drew will now get onto the internet and find what I'm talking about. It's called the something men.
Minutemen.
It's
the
called the
Highwaymen.
Museum Men or something like that.
That sounds like a rubbish name, Bernard.
And they basically went and repatriated the artwork because they thought that the artwork would be destroyed.
Oh, okay. All right.
Ticket to Paradise?
No.
The Midnight Sky?
No. Perhaps it wasn't George Clooney.
You sure it's not Nicolas Cage
air?
or something like that? Or was it Nicolas Cage? I don't know why I'm thinking Nicolas Cage. I haven't even seen the movie, but I just thinking the sort of thing Nicolas Cage.
Hearing
sort of thing Nicolas Cage would do, isn't it?
Yeah, that'd be Cage.
Sort of thing Nicolas Cage would do.
Monument movie.
The Monument Man?
Hunt for Hitler's Stolen Art in George Clooney Project. The Monument. The Monuments Men.
The Monuments Men.
There you go.
There we are. The Monuments Men. We got there by a combination of flair and skill, where the flair is provided by my trousers. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. Should we listen to a track now? Say our farewells to Bernie. We're almost at the end of the show anyway.
Are we? We've managed to burble our way through 2 hours of good stuff.
Thanks for coming on, Bernard.
That's all right. It's a pleasure.
Always like chatting to you.
Yeah.
You are a friend of the pod, sir.
Yeah.
We hope everyone out there enjoyed Bernie's interactions tonight.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm sure he'll come on again at some point.
I will. I'll probably talk about the JFK.
We didn't even get onto that this week, did we?
Yeah, JFK.
Because that's or
Nixon,
or the moon landings, or
Nixon, moon landings,
Nixon,
whatever.
Watergate. Those are my three topics.
They're your go-tos.
It's always good.
Those are three topics of conversation that will get a party either started or finished.
Yeah, we'll save it till next time. Cheers, Bernie.
Cheers.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, it is. You're listening to Pandora's Box. Thanks for chilling with us this evening, everybody. We appreciate every single one of you. Our guest today was Bernard Critchley, tax extraordinaro, and all-round trivia nut bar.
Mas nut bar.
Yeah.
Mas interesante.
I said, I'm sure you've figured out by now. Loves his trivia, loves his information. Bernard, as I said, it has been on Mastermind before, which if you don't know what Mastermind is, I mean, I'm sure you do. Let's face it, unless you're listening from another country, but it's a British quiz show, isn't it? But it's considered like one of the harder ones. You know, it's not like Eggheads. You know, it's like right up there with University Challenge.
You gotta know your stuff.
Yeah. So, thanks for Bernard for coming on anyway. We're going to finish off the episode with... Quickfire Facts!
Quickfire Facts.
So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about Paul Bruce Dickinson. Drew, who's Bruce Dickinson?
Iron Maiden, baby.
The lead singer of Iron Maiden.
He's also a pilot.
Yeah, he's actually a fascinating man.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, he's one of those people that's a bit like Sir Christopher Lee. You know, like, I mean, just listen to this. He's worthy of recognition, definitely, because just listen to this, right? Bruce Dickinson is the vocalist of Iron Maiden. At 64 years of age, he is also a director of marketing of a marketing company, a commercial airlines pilot, a DJ, a screenwriter. He has a PhD in music, so he's actually a doctor, technically. He's a professional level fencer, so like as in like sword fighting. He's a writer. He's a professor of history. He's an expert businessman, an honorary citizen of Sarajevo. I don't even know where that is, to be honest with you. He's got an honorary doctorate. He's a part of the Faculty of Philosophy. He's an honorary group captain in the Royal Air Force. He has a silver medal at British veteran in the British veteran fencing team, and he survived his battle against cancer.
Wow!
Nice.
So fair play to Bruce Dickinson. Not only you are the lead singer of Iron Maiden, but you are also a friend of the pod.
I thought it was so cool as well. Like they have their own private Iron Maiden jet, and he just like flies them to the gigs and stuff all around the world. That was amazing.
That is really cool. Isn't
like
it?
flying yourself and your band to the gig that you're going to perform. That is.
You got a tour bus. Cool. I got a tour plane.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you guys something pretty cool, also pretty horrible now. So have you guys obviously heard of scurvy before?
You used to get it on ships.
That's it. It's really common to get it on boats.
Is it like vitamin C deficiency?
That's it. Yeah, it's like vitamins deficiency, but like mainly vitamin C. So they figured it was like a massive problem back in the day, around the sort of time, you know, the Napoleonic War era, sort of around the time of the American Revolution as well, and the French Revolution, that sort of time. But it was a massive problem until doctors found out that you could cure scurvy from giving people fruit. And all they would have to do is give them oranges, and then they would recover. But people die from scurvy. One of the things that's really crazy as well, and it makes you almost like appreciate the human body, but also makes you think about how horrible scurvy would have been in extreme cases. So we've obviously all got scars. Did you know that like once a scar heals, though, it's not just like healed forever. Your body basically has to constantly regenerate that scar tissue. Right, but when one of the things that happens in advanced scurvy is your body no longer has the ability to produce scar tissue, so all of your wounds that have scarred over before just reopen. How weird though is that? Because it seems a really weird thought in my brain anyway, for me personally. Just imagine just that, like, just a scar that you've had for ages will then just like reopen. Just wake up in the morning and it's just like blood's just like seeping out of it, and it's like an old scar that you've had since you were like a kid.
No, thank you.
It's just reopened.
That's crazy.
We don't want that.
It's because the collagen holding together your scars is an active process rather than a passive one, and without vitamin C, your body can't do it anymore. Your body just reopens.
Need all those vitamins.
It's crazy.
Eat your vegetables, eat your fruits.
That's right.
I always thought that the reason they didn't like cure it was because I thought they always knew that they had to eat fruit, but they just like couldn't get fruit because they were obviously always on like a boat, so there was no place to get fruit from.
I don't think they knew.
I think once they found out, they would just take like baskets of fruit on ships.
And one of the most for the really long ship journeys and that, like the most eaten thing was like cured meat.
Cured meat mostly. Yes, very salted meat, and then also like some fish, I guess. But to think, I mean, it seems obvious thing to say, but it's no access to vegetation or fruit on a boat in the middle of the ocean, is there? Did you know that according to Men's Fitness magazine, women have sex 17% more often than men?
What?
Yeah. I'm actually not that surprised by that, really. Because I think men talk a big game, and women do the opposite. I think women don't talk about stuff like that at all. But I mean, let's face it, I think that women have the opportunity more often. Because of the nature of what men are like.
That's weird though, isn't it? It's strange.
Yeah.
Well, I assume that means like same sex as well. Otherwise, it would be 50-50, no?
What, scissoring?
Bullwinkle, don't be silly. It doesn't have to be same sex.
I'm confused.
Mate,
just
50% of the men in the world aren't sleeping with the other 50% of the... You know what I mean? Say 50...
I think we're saying the same thing. But saying it in different ways. I'm saying they've got more of a percentage because...
No,
right?
No,
they just have sex more than men do.
Yeah, they just have sex more than men. It's simple as that.
How does that work? Because if you're saying that this is strictly a...
it's not about amount of men and amount of women.
No. It's not like 50 men and 50 women are put in a room.
No.
You're imagining it like 50 men and 50 women are put in a room. And then like one man is paired up with a woman. And then so that women must then have sex with the women as well. That's not the case. It could just be a matter of you could be friends with a girl and that girl might have had sex 3 times that week and you've only had sex once.
Yeah, so...
Boom. She's instantly had sex 3 times more than you. So you've only had sex 33% as much as she has. Got it? Cool.
We'll move on.
Did you know that the average healthy man produces approximately 300 million sperm in just a teaspoon of his semen?
But he doesn't know what to do with it, apparently.
Yeah. Also, a sperm can live inside a woman's body
5
for
days.
up to a week before it dies, even if it hasn't fertilised the egg yet.
Yeah, I thought it was 5 days, but yeah, a week. That's crazy.
7 days. I mean, it's pretty much the same, isn't it?
That's what I'd heard.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting, that, isn't it? I mean, it's just imagine that, like, you know, there could just be like a little
swimming
for any
around
ladies out there recently that might have had sex in the last week. There might be a little sperm just wriggling around inside of you right now. It's a weird thought, isn't it? That's a weird thought.
Around.
Did you know that sex counts as a workout? During 30 minutes of sex, you burn about 200 calories.
Nice.
So, you know.
If you can make it last for 30 minutes.
Yeah, probably like 10 calories usually. Yeah.
Burning a solid 10 calories.
Woo!
Once a month.
Did you know that apparently 12% of women admit to have at some point answered their phone and had a conversation during sex?
Oh, yeah.
That's weird. Like, because I mean, I've never done that, and I wouldn't do that.
Do you reckon you've ever picked up the phone to someone and they've been
not that I've noticed.
Jiggy with it.
Not that I've noticed. The thing that I think's weird about that is like I would just ignore the phone call and then ring back the person afterwards.
I
would be like,
I think it's a bit for women. I think it's a bit of like a weird turn on or something.
Yeah,
do you know
I
what I mean?
that's
like
right.
a bit of a kinky thing.
It's a kink.
You know, it's one of those kinkies.
Oh, hey, Daddy.
Oh, my God.
I went there. Sorry, everyone.
Remember, we are on the radio.
I take that back. Sorry, everyone. I'm even sorry to myself. I don't know what comes over me sometimes. Did you know that Andre the Giant grew so fast that his own parents didn't recognise him on television? He left home at the age of 14 and didn't return until he was 19 years old. He then explained that he had become a professional wrestler. As he explained...
At 14, nice.
Yeah. As he explained his career choice to them, they then realised that they had seen him wrestle on TV under his alias of Andre the Giant without even realising it was their son.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Because that's just gigantism in that. It's just crazy, isn't it? That's just crazy.
So was he not that tall when he was 14 then? And he literally was like in a growth spurt?
That's like
I expect he was already... I wouldn't be surprised. He was probably already like my size or bigger.
Yeah.
When he was 14. But I think when he returned when he was 19, he was probably like 7'4".
Yeah.
Which is how tall he was at his biggest.
Crazy. Because
that's the thing with gigantism. It's like there's a problem in your body that just
doesn't stop.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't know when to stop growing. So you just carry on growing. And often a lot of the time they die quite young because it's just such a strain on your heart and stuff like that. Yeah. Did you know that bears are considered by wildlife biologists to be one of the most intelligent animals in North America? They possess the largest and most convoluted brains relative to their size of any land mammal. In the animal kingdom, their intelligence compares with that of higher primates. Bears have been observed to take in beauty. So they're one of the few animals that could say, come out into a clearing on a cliff, look at a beautiful scene, and then they will just sit and
appreciate it.
Isn't
That's
beautiful?
Awesome.
Whereas most animals just don't even have that ability.
I like that they're getting the respect as well, because they're not. Yeah. I feel like if you were to say what are the most intelligent animals, my mind wouldn't go straight to bears.
No, not at all. I completely agree. Cool. Yeah, I completely agree. Just finishing off a nice little one now before we finish up the show. J.K. Rowling wrote a real person into her book The Goblet of Fire. A girl named Natalie MacDonald, who was a Harry Potter fan, was dying of leukemia while Rowling was still writing the book. You can see her character as a first year who dons the sorting hat and is sorted into Gryffindor. J.K. Rowling did it so that her fan would live on forever in her works. That's a nice little wholesome story, isn't it?
That's cool.
Anyway, we've come to the end of another session here this week in Pandora's Box. Thanks for chilling with us, everybody. We love you. I've been Obadiah.
I've been Mr. Drew Jangles.
I've been Bullwinkle.
We love you. Catch you next time, everybody. You are friends of the pod.
Oh, yeah.